It's a cool Tuesday morning in the city of Lagos, and welcome to the newspaper review, to the traffic report segment on AM Cafe. My name is Faith Agbetuyi, and this morning we'll be taking a look at what the traffic condition is on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway and the Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway. Helping us with that this morning is the Route Commander Florence Okwe of the Mowe unit of the Ogun Command of the FRSC. And Florence is standing by for us right now. Ms. Florence, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you this morning? Can you please update us with what is happening on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway this morning?
The traffic situation on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway this morning. Inward Lagos, from Togo Ibadan to Onigari, the traffic is free. Onigari and Alapapo free flow. Alapapo Sidowo is also free. Interchange is free. Kara RCCG is free flow. Mowe is free. Ashisha Ibapo, there's no movement due to the narrow lane and the diversion point. MFM Mago is also free. Opic down to Vega, free flow of the plan movement. And Lagos-Ibadan section, that is Agwas Lagos, Vega Opic is free.
Okay.
Magoro MFM free flow.
Okay.
Ibapo is free. Mowe free flow. RCCD Kara to interchange is also free. Sidowo Alapapo is free. Onigari down to Togo Ibadan, free flow of the plan movement. We have one obstruction at the Badoo Bridge.
Okay.
There's no crash at this moment.
All right. So it's right to say that the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is averagely free this morning.
Yes. Free
All
flow of
right.
the plan movement.
Okay. So what's the update on the Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway this morning?
Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway, we have slow movement at Owode, Iyanologo. There's slow movement. It went to Lafayette to Itori, magnetic slow movement of vehicles. Then Abeokuta Lagos, we have Iyanosele, Owode slow movement due to the bad portion of the road.
Okay.
Owode Sango is slow movement. Alafupo Masalasi is slow movement. We have slow movement at Kola. But one other section remains free, no obstruction, no ROTC. As far as I advise motorists to drive cautiously, obey traffic rules and regulations, avoid overspeeding. This morning you can see the poor visibility where we advise motorists to ensure that their light is working perfectly, ensure your Wi-Fi is in good condition, avoid driving under the influence of alcohol or route violation. Call FRSC toll-free number 122 to report any crash or obstruction. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. It seems the Lagos-Abeokuta Expressway is not as free as we have on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway this morning, right?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Many thanks for joining us, Florence Okwe, for that update this morning. All right, we'll move on to the newspaper review segment on AM Cafe. Don't go anywhere, we'll be back shortly. Welcome to the newspaper review segment on AM Cafe. We're still in the Lagos studios, and this morning we are going to be reviewing different issues as reported on Punch newspaper, The Nation newspaper, Vanguard newspaper, The Guardian newspaper, and we'll be reviewing different issues from business to crimes and some political stories. My name is Faith Agbetuyi, and I won't be doing this alone. I have with me in the studio Folashade. How are you doing this morning?
I'm very fine, thank you. I'm Folashade Obrindi, welcoming you to the newspaper review segment on the AM Cafe. So let's move on now to the Vanguard newspaper. The Vanguard this morning is reporting Presidential tussle, tribunal orders Atiku PDP to prove case in 10 days. That story is on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. The story has a couple of riders. It says 400 witnesses lined up. APC Buhari gets 6 days to respond to PDP's petition. Ordinary witnesses to present evidence in 5 minutes to be cross-examined in 10 minutes. 10 minutes for star, expert and subordinate witnesses, 20 minutes for cross-examination. Other stories making the front page of the Vanguard. 30,000 naira minimum wage. Labour asks civil servants to prepare for nationwide strike. That story is on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. The story here says many Nigerians aren't happy, says Obasanjo, and that story is on page 9 of the Vanguard. Just above the masthead, the story here says in Mile 2, Apapa open defecation thrives. There's a picture there of such act being displayed. Okay, a story here says we live in a treacherous world and must fight for our place under the sun. That story is on page 31 of the Vanguard newspaper. How Obasanjo nearly assaulted Alameye Siga, says Osoba. The story is also on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper. A business story by the CBN survey says business consumers' confidence in the economy to rise in July. That story is on page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. Just below the picture here, there's a story here that says opposition mounts as Southeast governors, Southern Middle Belt leaders, YCE, Agbekoya can kick against Ruga settlements. That story is on page 4 of the Vanguard newspaper. Nigeria drifting into anarchy, Northern leaders raise alarm. That story is on page 35 of the Vanguard newspaper. Closer, Fatoyibo bows to pressure, steps down. It's not enough to step down, you must investigate, lawyers tell pastor. That story is on page 3 of the Vanguard newspaper. A story here says court orders permanence for feature of patient Jonathan's 9.2 billion naira, 8.4 million naira, $4 to federal government. That story is on page 11 of the Vanguard newspaper. Now let's move over to the Nation newspaper.
And the Nation newspaper is reporting that governors split as cattle settlements now rages. That's on page 2 and page 3 of the Nation newspaper. More stories. Koza Pastor Biodun Fatoyinbo steps aside. That's on page 41 of the Nation newspaper. Jonathan's wife forfeits 12.2 billion naira to federal government. That story is on page 7 of the Nation newspaper. Lagos boat accident death toll is 15. On page 4, CBN ordered to release data to JTB. On page 11 of the Nation newspaper, Oshoba relieves assassination attempts. On page 46 of the Nation newspaper, court orders arrest of NFF officials. That's on page 38 of that paper. And still on the front page of the Nation newspaper, oil hits $66 on court signals. Oil surged to a 5-week high yesterday after Saudi Arabia and Russia signed an extension of the non-members of the Oil Organization of Petroleum Exporting Companies, OPEC, output cuts and a United States-China agreement to restart trade talks improved the demand of outlooks. That story continues on page 6 if you really are curious about what's happening in Nigeria's oil market. Then we'll move again to police go after killers of DPO3 orders. It was a sad story for people yesterday as they lost 6 officers to gunmen in Rivers and Bayelsa State. That story is on page 6 if you want to know what that is all about. Presidential election dispute. Atiku PDP gets 10 days to call 400 witnesses. That's on page 48 of the Nation newspaper. Still on the Nation, Olatunji Dare returns. That's that series on page 2 of the Nation newspaper. We'll have all of that on the Nation. We'll move away from that to having front page stories on the Nigerian Tribune.
The Nigerian Tribune this morning is reporting with the story minimum wage nationwide strike looms. Labour accuses federal government of derailing implementation. That story is on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. Gunmen attack police station in Bayelsa, killed DPO and 3 others. That story is on page 30 of the Nigerian Tribune. Koza Pastor Fatoyinbo steps down. Lawyers divided over probe allegations. That story is on page 34 of the Nigerian Tribune. Court orders final forfeiture of $8.4 million and 7.4 billion naira linked to Patience Jonathan. That story is on page 12 of the Nigerian Tribune. Astoria says presidential election, Atiku PDP to call 400 witnesses within 14 days. That story is on page 32. Astoria says Southern Middle Belt leaders to presidency disclose Gazette number for Ruga states that applied. With the rider Benue governor kicks as Bauchi play to Gombe back scheme. That story is on page 5, 6 and 7 of the Nigerian Tribune. Just above the masthead, there's a report here that says front page comment stopping federal government's Ruga settlement for headers. It's on the front page and continued on page 13 of the Nigerian Tribune. There's a story here, this story reporting about the labor union saying that there's looming strike with regards to the implementation of the new minimum wage, the 30,000 naira minimum wage. And we've had cases of the labor union coming out to protest against maybe the increase in fuel or such strikes like this. But there was a report that it's kind of old school to go on strikes. Yeah, there was a labor expert who made mention of that it's old school to go on strikes, that the new school is to have like a one-on-one sit with the government in power. And Nigerians would hope that when they have a sit down, it will be resolved, because strike at the end of the day
might not change anything.
Exactly. So let's move on now to the Punch newspaper.
And we have the banner headline on the Punch newspapers: Ruga settlements, Southeast governors autumn tackle federal government. Fayemi says no outsider can take Ekiti land. If there are negative comments being peddled around that some people are coming to take over Ekiti land, they are mere hearsay. It cannot happen in Ekiti except I am no longer the governor. That's coming from Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayemi. I have more stories on that paper. FG pays 135 billion naira payee debt to states. That's on page 31 of the Punch newspaper. Mismanagement of diversity stagnating Nigeria. That's coming from Obasanjo. And you really are curious, that's on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. Buhari sacks controversial NHIS boss on page 9 of the Punch newspaper. Scores feared dead as tanker explodes in Benue on page 4 of the Punch newspaper. The Punch also has pictures of that gory accident. That's a scene of an accident at Ahumbe along Makodi Aliade Road in Benue State on Monday. That's yesterday. And we have more stories on that paper. 6 more bodies recovered in Lagos boat attack. Lagos boat accidents. That's on page 4 of the Punch newspaper. Makinde sets up panel to probe local governments under Ajimobi. That's on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. Court orders forfeiture of Patience Jonathan's 9.2 billion naira and $8.4 million. That's on page 8 of the Punch newspaper. Alleged rape. Koza pastor Fatoyinbo takes leave of absence on page 9 of the Punch newspaper. Gunmen kill DPO, pregnant cope. 5 others in Bayelsa, Rivers State on page 4 and page 5 of the Punch newspaper. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch, we have Atiku to call 400 witnesses as lawyers propose Thursday for trial. That's on page 18 of the Punch newspaper. We'll move away from the Punch onto the Guardian newspaper.
The front page of the Guardian: more states groups reject Ruga settlement for headers with the riders. We won't cede Ekiti land to outsiders, Fayemi vows. No plan for it in southeast, south-south. Benue flares claim of gazetted land in 36 states. Bauchi backs government. List of pilot states released. The story is on the front page of the Guardian and continued in the page 6 of the same newspaper. Astoria says PDP wants Buhari probed over alleged rising graft insecurity. That story is on page 3. NFF boss Amaju Pinnick, 4 others get bench warrants. That story is on page 3. Eagles to know AFCON round of 16 opponents today. That story is in the Guardian Sports, pages 59 to 56, and also the back page of the Guardian newspaper. Moving on, Labour may resume strike over new minimum wage. That story is on page 3. Gunmen killed DPO, pregnant cop, and 2 others in Bayelsa police station. That story is in the Metro section page and page 8 of the Guardian newspaper. Dozens burned to death as fuel tanker explodes in Benue State. That's on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. The final story I have here on the front page: court orders for feature of Patience Jonathan's 7.5 billion naira and $8.4 million. That story is continued on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. This story is becoming more interesting because security experts have said, that the Ruga settlement could be something good enough, could be, according to the plan by the federal government to ensure that, that this issue of the farmers clash and, the headers clash, come to an end. But however, security experts are raising alarm that this could also pose security risk, because if you're settling people free of charge in certain areas all around Nigeria, and the Fulani headsmen, according to reports, have been known to to be violent sometimes, would this not pose a security risk to the indigenous people of that land? So there are lots of issues raising, and some governors are opposing the idea, but we hope that there is solution to this finally.
All of this.
Exactly.
Well, we move away from the Guardian newspaper to some business stories coming from the inside page of the Punch newspaper. Have RMAFC vows to revisit revenue sharing formula. The newly reconstituted board of the Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission resumed work on Monday and vowed to revisit the nation's revenue sharing formula. I have another story here. Nigeria orders support 9-month oil court extension. NACO to expand agri-export begins equipment overhaul, and NCDMB disburses $160 million from Nigerian Content Intervention Fund. Well, that's all we can take this morning on the newspaper review segment on AM Cafe. My name is Faith Agbetuya. Join us tomorrow for another beautiful edition of the program.
Over now to Ibadan for the rest of the program. I am Folashade Grinde saying good morning.